Let me just read this bit. I know how arrogant this sounds, but I'm going to say it anyway. I don't often feel intellectually intimidated, and when I do, I love it. For me, there's something so utterly infectious about the combination of raw intelligence, knowledge, and passion for the subject matter that there are some people I could listen to all day. Give me...
Is he speaking in the mirror?
Give me one guess each who he's about to name as somebody who could listen to all day because he feels intellectually inferior to him.
It's not Tony Blair, is it?
Alistair Campbell.
No, you both got it wrong. Akala would be very near the top of that list. Yep.
Okay.
The mixed Scottish-Jamaican guy who, of course...
wrote that awful poem.
He's right at the top of my list as well. You guys are just racist.
He wrote that book, Natives. He's got a Scottish mum and an absent Jamaican father. Because he even says, Akala's Scottish mother and Jamaican father separated before he was born. And he was raised in what he has termed the cliched single-parent working-class family. And he goes on to do this really big...
See, this is a typical shitlib thing. I found a half-white, half-black working-class kid. I am now going to venerate him. I am now going to fetish him. I'm now going to raise him up on a platform. I mean, this is what Bob Villain is. Like, the exact thing. They love this mixed race working class like sob story basically, and they're like, yep, no, you go on the pedestal. I'm too privileged. I went to a fancy school. You know, they sit there and go, oh, I had the best of everything and therefore I'm a bad person, whereas you, who've got a long criminal record, you were a good person and you're not white, so you know.
I remember reading back in the day as well, like, because I forced myself to just read one of the critical race theory texts, and it was the Why I'm No Longer Speaking to White People About Race one, and it was just...
I never actually read that one.
Well, there was an interesting insofar as it was revealing, chapter in it where she, this Renée Idulog, she basically says, well, the question that I always get asked when I'm being a colossal race grifter is, what about class? And she basically writes this entire paragraph, and you can summarize it as, well, it doesn't really matter because the new working class are just the minorities, so we're still in favour of the working class. And it's exactly that.
It's the global working class, global South. We're a globalist, global British.
It's like, don't you think it's a bit racist to think that a working class man is a white working class man from Barnsley called John?
No.
It's like, is it? Oh, no, I don't.
No, that's exactly what it is. Yeah.
But I mean, then he dedicates a few pages to a conversation he had with Akala where he just gives the microphone over because, of course, even in his own book, his very, very lazy book, he has to give the microphone over to underrepresented voices. You know, Akala, who already has his own incredibly self-indulgent, self-obsessed book, where Akala just gives this big thing, kind of playing word games with statistics and saying it's socioeconomic factors, bro.
Well, there we go.
There it is. There it is. And James O'Brien just ends up saying, like, yep, sounds about right to me. But then he carries on the racial subject matter into the fourth chapter, where you can see, again, the effect that therapy has had on him in breaking down who he was, his kind of internal defense mechanisms, his self-defense, and allows him to be walked over by people who just basically have a better sob story than him, or at least a more in vogue sob story than him. So here's the example that he gives, where he's talking about people with the idea of institutional racism. He says, in every other corner of my career, I would have sniggered out loud at this suggestion. Perhaps more significantly, I would have presumed that I was supposed to. I'd done radio phone-ins about how jobs should always go to the best qualified candidate, apparently without noting that it could hardly be a coincidence that they almost always turned out to be white. I wonder why that would be, James. I wonder. Meritocracy privileges white people. It must be institutional racism. I had been absolutely furious when, during a particularly fallow period in my own working life, a famous female friend had greeted the news that I was up for a juicy job with the line, "Oh, that's just what we needed. Another posh, straight white man on the telly." And then...
let's hear her out.
And then, when the pilot program we made failed to cut the mustard, the message came back from the commissioning editor that we loved James, but do you think we can find him in black?
Great question.
So, literally, what he's giving there is an example of him
Being racially discriminated
Yes, being racially discriminated against by a large institution.
Yep.
Okay? Subconsciously, he carries on, all of this had conspired in my mind to create a very real sense that I had to somehow overcome problems born of my own skin colour. What problems would that be? What's the problem of being white, James? So for all of my noble tub-thumping about other people's blindness to racism and white privilege, Emma poked a sore point I didn't know I had when she introduced the notion that I wouldn't have been on the radio if I hadn't been white. Well, apparently you would have, according to this pilot programme where they were explicitly looking for black people.
Amazing. That is genuinely incredible.
Now, let me carry on. It's funny because I positively proselytise about the facts that I wouldn't be on the radio or the TV or writing a book if I hadn't been adopted by the best parents or given an expensive education and its attendant access all areas laminated passes, but the idea that I had also benefited from being white was a step too far. It's not hard to see why. My education was a gift from my parents. Their sacrifice and effort singled me out. Advantages accrued by my skin colour cannot be cast in such a noble light, and so it was more comforting to deny that they existed at all.
But he literally got refused a job on the basis of his skin colour.
Yes, this doesn't seem to... The weird thing is, with everything else that comes after, he might as well not have included that sentence at all, because it's an active evidence against what he's saying.
It's completely incongruent.
And then he says, of course, I didn't work all of this out in the immediate aftermath of binning Emma's call on the radio show. I did, however, read hundreds of mostly polite and measured tweets, texts, and emails castigating me, because this is all regarding some call with a girl called Emma, who after the George Floyd murders was like, you shouldn't be talking about this. It should be a black woman talking about this.
Well, I agree.
And he was like, well, but I care about the death of George Floyd. I'm just as much of a shitlib as you are. Yeah. So how would a black woman be more qualified? I got here by merit. And she's like, no, black woman or no one. Hand the microphone over, James. So he was like, he's saying how annoyed he was. Also because he experienced institutional racism against himself. I did, however, read hundreds...
And that woman's literally being racist to him on the call.
Yeah.
Like, no, you're white. I don't want to hear it. Oh, sorry.
I did, however, read hundreds of mostly polite and measured tweets, texts, and emails castigating me while we were still on air in the strongest terms for behaving so poorly. Sorry, for defending yourself. Okay. Pre-therapy... Here's the important part.
Okay.
Pre-therapy James was like, how dare you?
I would doubtless have doubled down on the offence, insisting that you don't know how the industry works, and perhaps even reached for the latest word weapons of the terminally wrong and called my critics woke or snowflakes. Alternatively, perhaps I would have closed my eyes, put my fingers in my ears, and pretended the whole thing had never happened. I might even have railed against the mob, trying to close down my freedom of speech, because that is a lot easier than thinking, reflecting, and admitting mistakes.
So, hang on. What you're saying is the right is completely correct on all of this?
Yes, and it's therapy that made him a weaker man.
And if only you brainwash yourself.
Post-therapy, though, I take those highly adrenalized feelings of fear and persecution, and instead of transforming them into aggression or arrogance, I ask myself whether I am actually in the wrong. So therapy has made James a weaker person. Less likely to defend himself.
Not actually in the wrong here.
More easy to roll over, more likely to roll over and let other people bully him, abuse him, and berate him.
But he only takes the idea that he could be wrong when flanked from the left.
Yeah, absolutely. But that is remarkable, because like on the one rare occasion that James Bryan is actually right about something. He has to be therapized into essentially getting rid of his entire spirited side and say, you know what, I should just roll over and give up.
Well, and then he follows it up with a transcript of how he called Emma back and apologized to her.
Amazing.
Incredible. So therapy worked.
For new men.
If you want to be the new man who gives up all of his masculinity, gives up his job, and hands everything over to a bunch of incredibly privileged, smug...
racial activists,
then therapy is for you, apparently. If you enjoyed this piece of premium content from the Lotus Eaters, head to our website where you can find more.